Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rose, and over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on-site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset. Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on The Maintenance Mindset, and it is my pleasure to have Matt Trotter as a guest again. But for those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet Matt yet, Matt, who are you? What do you do? What do you know? And what should we know?
Absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for having me here today. Well, I am the subject matter expert for all things HVAC. I've got about 25 years in the business, going from commercial, industrial to residential across the board and with multifamily. And honestly, it's just awesome getting to be here and talk with you. I know we got a great topic to talk about that's really important this year and next year. And I think that's one of the biggest things people should know about me is I'm an avid pickleball player and I just love it. Maybe a bit too aggressive at times, but it's one of my favorite sports because I can play it at a high level against old people. It just really works out well for me. You know, one of those things where I can get my wins, just don't ask me how.
I am an avid pickleball watcher and an appreciator of it because
Absolutely.
if you know, you've seen my physique, so I don't exactly have the most athletic
What?
build for that level of activity.
No, you're like a coiled spring, Paul, just ready at a moment's notice, just gonna get out there and make it happen.
I've kind of satisfied myself with the fact that I am in shape, and round is a shape.
Round is a wonderful shape. Pear, great shape. All good shapes.
So while we're talking about shape, for segue, what do you think of the shape that the air conditioning industry is in February of 2025?
Well, let's see. Being here, working with Chadwell University and Chadwell Supply, what I've seen the last few years and what's taking shape, I'm just going to roll with that. What's taking shape this year is the most aggressive transition ever in the EPA history. Like, this is all about transitioning to the new gases, the new refrigerants, moving over to A2Ls. And we are February, March, where are we? I don't know what day it is, but we are in 2025. And this year is kind of the last 10, 11 months that our industry gets to make a decision. And it is really aggressive, Paul, like really aggressive.
It is, and from a regulatory framework, if I remember right, about October, maybe September of 2024, the EPA actually gave us a little bit extra buffer period. And
right.
what we're referring to is that this year, 2025, is the last chance that customers, property management companies, us, have the ability to install R410A equipment.
You are right on the nose. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So little bit of history then. So this all started back in 2020 when they signed the AIM Act into place, and it started this reduction of 410A gas. So the EPA affects product by messing with the gas. That's what they do to us. So we had a reduction then. 2024, the reduction that was increased. So it went from 10% reduction to additional 30% reduction, which means they're only making 60% of R410A and other gases, but for us, R410A this year until 2029. And in 2029, it's going to reduce again down to where they're only making 30%. So another 30% is going to go off of it. Now, when they reduce the amount that they make, but the demand is still high, costs usually go up. And that's what they're going to do, but they haven't yet. Now, what they're doing to us is actually called a phase down and not a phase out. The refrigerants that are kind of combined in 410A, R125 and R32, well, the R125, that's the bad gas. It has a very high global warming potential. And the whole goal for this is to reduce the carbon footprint to the earth. And everything is related to carbon dioxide, which has got a GWP of 1. So they said 410A is got too high, being 2088, and it now has to be 700 or below. And that's what new gases are. Well, they already kind of figured it out for us. They picked 2 gases to work with. One's R32, one's R454B, and we get to decide which way we want to go. It's the first time in history that we have 2 gases that we get to choose from.
Yes, and those 2 gases are the for the colloquialism we're talking here. Yes, you're going to hear us talk about a lot of numbers for the refrigerant nerds in the room, but you, the audience, you may know it more as Freon. The Freon that is in the system, that's what we're discussing. And each of the numbers, we can think about that as different names. So you just heard Matt talk about 410A, 32, 454B. Those, you can think about those as Freon Bob, Freon Jim, Freon Janet. They're those names, and they each have individual personalities and individual traits that are required for engineering to be required when they're put into engineered systems. Correct. So we have this year to the fact that R410A, that refrigerant, is decreasing, and R32 and R454B systems are increasing. And as a matter of fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but January 1 of this year, 410A systems can't even be made anymore, right?
It's all over. So the gas is still around for service because we use the gas for service and other things. But last year, January 1, 2025, December 31st, 2024, that was the last day any manufacturer was allowed to even make a product with 410A in it. Now, a lot of the manufacturers all quit around October. They needed to be ready for the new year. So they stopped earlier on. But now there is no more production of R410A equipment out there. And all manufacturers and distributors, Chadwell included, they stockpiled and everything they could. But the crazy thing, Paul, is that we asked for as much as we could get. And then our manufacturers, AirQuest, Goodman, they told us how much we could have. Right. They said, whoa, we only have so many compressors. We only have so much gas. We don't have that much. We only have so many, XYZ of parts. We can only make this much. You get this. And that's what you have to work with. Now, Chadwell Supply, we have our own manufacturing where we do Brothers units. Brothers is literally created by Chadwell Brothers, and it comes from a great manufacturing and has fantastic attributes. You can look all that up on Chadwell Supply. It's got an LG compressor. It's a design that's been around for decades. Well, we said, okay, we're going to manufacture as much as we can because this year in 2025, this is the decision year. This is where multifamily needs to make that decision as to what they want to do and where they want to go. So we stockpiled 410A Brothers units in 4 sizes. Do you know what those sizes are, Paul?
I don't, but I'm guessing you can tell me.
1.5 ton, 2 ton, 2.5, and 3.
Wow.
Those are the sizes. What are those 4 sizes that multifamily uses the most of?
Those exact ones, which is what we need.
I mean, it kind of impressed me being in this industry for so long and coming along here and saying, well, multifamily, what is special about it? Why is it different? What are the biggest changes? And then it kind of came to me when I'm talking with Chadwell Supply and all the salespeople here, because they know so much. And they're like, oh, we don't worry about 4 tons. We don't worry about 5 tons. I was like, they want condensers. They want 1.5, 2 ton condensers. They want 2.5, 3 ton if they've got 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. Like, that's what they want. What about air handlers? They want air handlers too. They need the pancake air handler. They need the front air handler return, the stud mounted one, and then they need some multi-port. It's like they've got this lined out. And all of that equipment that they're used to doing, Chadwell sells through Brothers in just those capacities. But the biggest thing that the decision comes down to is the last date you can install a 410A piece of equipment is December 31st, 2025. That's 10, 11 months away. After that, you're not even allowed to sell or install a 410A piece of equipment.
I like the fact that this heavy date, meaning this is it, that's all, done, finished, is really forcing us, the multifamily industry, to kind of adjust our thinking. We are traditionally, we're a reaction-based industry of the crisis occurs and then we take the best decision that we can make in the middle of the crisis.
In the moment, right.
In the moment. Well, this is based on, as you mentioned, from 4-year-old legislation that over the course of these 4 years, it takes time. I mean, for these new gases, building codes had to change.
Absolutely.
So it forced us to be initiative, proactive, instead of waiting. Like, I mean, I'm old enough to remember that this gray hair is natural. I'm old enough to remember when we made the change from 10 SEER to 13 SEER. Way back in the BC days before COVID.
Before COVID.
And that change was a reactionary, oh my gosh, at the property level, this new equipment is now twice the size of the old equipment. And of course, the manufacturers at that time, the manufacturers were putting out information and saying, hey, the new stuff based on the new regulations is going to be bigger. And as a part of the industry, I take responsibility and say, why didn't you tell me? And the manufacturers came back and said, we did tell you. Nobody you just didn't read. That's right. So it has forced us to be more initiative,
yes,
and more proactive as opposed to reactive.
When this came out, we started talking about this in 2023, late, October, November sometime. And as soon as we saw this, we got together here at Chadwell and said, we need to get information out in every aspect we can. Like, we can't just throw it and say, here's an email. We can't just do a flyer. We have to just shotgun approach this and go at it every direction. So what we did, we started that webinar, and it's the A2L webinar, which you've joined a few times and have asked wonderful questions. Appreciate those. But we did that every month, and I'm still doing that. We're still having that. Like, this month we'll have one, and the next month we're just keeping the information stream going, because nobody was actually paying attention. And it's amazing how now we're in this last deadline run, And you could do nothing and just have your property how it is. Yes, that's always an option. There's that wait and see
Nothing
option.
is an option. I like that.
Nothing is an option.
That almost seems like a t-shirt.
Right? But we like to make decisions and we like to have control of our own destiny. And the property might not want to just sit on their hands and see what happens, because after 2025 and 2026, you lose a compressor and you want to replace the unit, you're going with the new gas. You're going with A2Ls. And you have to be prepared for all that comes with that. There's additional safeties. There's additional processes and procedures to pay attention to when installing. And you need some additional tools. So there's some prep work in that. One thing, if you really want to be proactive and pay attention to it, this year, if you want to give yourself 5-6 years of buffer, then install 410A right now. Go through your properties, because a lot of properties don't like to install air handlers. Would you agree with that?
Correct. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, it's very disruptive to residents. You got to be inside their apartment and go at it.
Yep.
And the other is it works. It's functional.
Right. So some of the big things that we have to pay attention to is that if you replace 100% of the condenser, you have to do the whole system. That's for
A2Ls, for the new
A2Ls coming out. Yep, that's right. So if you do 100% of the condenser, you got to. If you do 75% of the air handler, you have to replace the whole system. That basically means if you replace the evaporator, the coil itself, whole system goes. That's your ratio for that. If you do the expansion valve, then no, that's like 25% of the system. Give you some numbers of what it looks like. So right now, a lot of systems out there, whether they're 410A, well, if they are 410A, you can just replace the condenser and you don't have to go to the new system, but it's only this year. So if you want new condensers to have a life of 5, 6, 8 years of good running life, then you want to do that now. That's the biggest call to action that we could say, is that don't bury your head in the sand. Listen to this podcast, find out information, because we are going to run out of equipment. Once we sell out, we sell out. We've stocked ourselves really well to not have that happen, but that's what I want multifamily management to really pay attention to, because after this next year, now there's nothing we can do. Now we have to get you up to speed on the new gases, which, thank you so much for putting that up, is the product knowledge page at chadwellsupply.com. You don't have to register. You don't have to sign in. Just put it in there, go to resources, and you will get all the information. We have put so much product knowledge on this page. I mean, there's the roadmap, there's the gases versus each other, there's tools that you need to have and get, there's myths that we've busted. All this stuff is on here, and it's easy to read, easy to digest, simple to follow.
It is. And I think it's important, before we begin getting into the nitty gritty of that, and I referenced A2L as the qualifying category for the new refrigerants that we're referring to. Before we even go there, it's important to realize that today, if you take the do nothing route, which is possible for this year, then you're fine. To where if you have an older property that you're still dealing with systems that aren't R410A, that go back to R22, or you're using the other retrofit refrigerants, that is fine for this year. If you take do nothing, as you said, you can just replace the outside unit and not worry about the inside unit. However, due to that category of A2L, which is what for those of you who are watching us on the webpage that you find at chadwellsupply.com, has resources to begin making those decisions for next year. And one of the biggest is you have to replace the entire system.
Right.
Now, Why? And I think that is the biggest answer or biggest question right now. Why? Why do we have to replace the inside when we replace the outside?
That's a fantastic question and a good lead in. So the reason is A2Ls. A2L, that all those things mean that alphanumerical means something. The A means non-toxic. So if I breathe it in, I do not become immediately sick, ill, or die. If it was a B, it would be considered higher toxicity. And if I breathe it in, I would become immediately sick, ill, or die. The 2L, usually it's just a 2. A2, A1, A3, all those mean something. A 1 means non-flammable or no flame propagation, which means if it lights, it doesn't spread, aggressively ahead of the ignition source. 2, it spreads a little bit faster ahead of the ignition source, so it does actually catch fire and then grow. And then 3 is like propane. You light it, it's gone, and all of a sudden you've got like no hair. Sorry, bad reference.
Before we go any further, you mentioned the propane word. Right now, be very, very clear. Do these new refrigerants contain propane?
They do not contain propane. There's no propane in these new refrigerants. It is, I can't even say the whole word to it, but there's no propane associated with it.
None.
Our new refrigerators and stuff, isobutane, R600A, things like that, R290, those are legitimate, highly flammable gases. This is actually a gas that is mildly flammable. And this is really important because there's rules that we follow in doing this. The gas is an A2L, which is lower flammability. That means it has a flame propagation or the burning ratio that's under 10 centimeters a second. Both gases are under 6, actually, 6.7 and under. So it does not grow. It does not spread. It takes a lot of the gas in one area to even ignite. And what it takes to ignite it is very high, 30 to 100 millijoules, which is more than a spark plug. And then the other one is like 100 to 300 millijoules. So very hard to ignite, very hard to light. There's nothing in the residence that can ignite this gas. And the best way that it's safe, just keep ventilation, air around it. The more air, then it will not ignite. That's the main key to it. So the reason why we have to replace the indoor unit is because with this new gas, safeties, UL, OSHA, all these agencies that will help us keep us safe, they put an additional safety at the indoor unit. It's a mitigation device that monitors for the refrigerant. If there's ever a leak, then it turns the fan on and it dissipates it and it dilutes it so that it's not flammable, will not ignite in the space. That's one of the main reasons why you have to replace both. If you have anything that has a charge that's 3.9 pounds and more, you need to have this safety in there. If it's less, you don't need the safety because there's technically not enough gas to warrant the ignition. That's the whole balance of it. Now, most systems are going to have 3.9 pounds or more. That's 99% of them. Maybe not the 1.5 ton on the first floor with no additional line set. Maybe that's the one that does it, but most of them are going to be that. Also, capacity-wise, you mentioned earlier about systems that are not 410A. We have our drop-ins, our replacements we've been working with for a very long time. Our 22 products have not been made since 2013. It's the last time they're manufactured, which means manufacturers no longer have to support that 10 years after they made their last one. That's a manufacturing rule. You have to support as long as you make the product 10 years after the fact. That means that our 22 products are no longer being supported, not from a compressor standpoint, a valve standpoint, a coil standpoint, all of it. It's going to become very difficult to find those products. And if you have leaks, you're not going to get the same coils. Well, 410A and the new gases, R32 and 454B, they can't operate with an indoor unit that was made for R22. It's too small. It's not right. The airflow is not right. And just because it's functional doesn't mean you're going to actually get the capacity that you need or it even is going to live a long life. So it's a huge deal that if you transition, you're going to change over to a gas. you need to pick, do I want to go with 410A right now, or I still will have to do for R22, we'll have to do inside and out, but I'll get 5 to 8 years and no additional safety? Or do I hold out and wait till after this year, and then I'm stuck with the R32 and the 454B, where now I'm jumping into, let's just say, the deep end, and I'm going to get additional safeties now. In multifamily, we don't like the additional water safeties that trip up our systems. We don't like those. We're going to be adding in additional safety, which is easy to wire in, but it's something you got to pay attention to moving forward from a technical standpoint and a maintenance standpoint.
Well, and there is another something that's involved beyond the safety aspect, and that's the efficiency standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
To where once we get from the oldest systems, and I think to categorize it easier, the oldest systems are those 22 systems, and those now
way to put it, yep,
are at the end of their life. Yes, we like to duct tape things and keep them running probably way longer than what they should, but they do work. They still function. However, today, they're becoming less and less functional to the point of obsolescence. They cannot even maintain temperatures in our apartments anymore.
Exactly. It's either that it's either not maintaining the right temperature that we want to get to, or the humidity level we want to get to, or it's freezing up. It's like those are the two options that we get. And when you switched over from R22 to a replacement gas, depending on what gas it was, you had a capacity decrease because there's blends and glides and things that happen. So you lost 5%, you lost 6%, which you tried to make up in charge. You tried to kind of balance it, which then became even more difficult. Moving forward from 410A, as you transition to the new gases, if you went from 22 to the new gas, depending on which gas you picked, you actually got a capacity increase. It actually went up, where like R32 has got a great capacity increase. It is 10% more than what you'd have with 410A because it's a denser gas. So it's a nice one to have. We love it in Florida. It really is. It's got a good track record. 454B has an increase from R22 by about 3 or 4%, but it has a 3% decrease from 410A. Still functional and still a great gas to work with, but it just has that little bit where you won't really notice it, but it's just slightly off. So as the capacity and the functionality is so important. If you keep with the older systems and just say, well, it's functional, it doesn't mean it's doing the job it was designed to do.
And I think it's important, since we're talking about terms that may have a different connotation. When we discuss increase of capacity, we're not talking that there's going to be more air blowing. There's not a greater quantity of air. So our residents won't reach up to the vent and feel, wow, it's really coming out hard now. The capacity we're referring to here is the quantity of heat that can transfer from, during the summer months, inside out. Since that's what our air conditioning systems do. And
100%.
For that, our oldest systems, R22, if we say it had the ability to move 12 units of heat, just for round numbers, an R410A system can move 12 units of heat using less energy. So that means there's a greater capacity. With the same quantity of energy used for an R410A system, it will move 15 units of heat. Well, our newest systems, so that third leg, older, middle, and newest systems, which is where we're at, that one, in essence, will move for the same quantity of energy, 16 or 17 units of heat. So we're still doing the same job. But the key component here is that we don't feel that change. In other words, you don't feel more air, and even that air itself won't feel a lower temperature. Will do the same job with less energy use. It's kind of like running your car, to where your old car would get you from point A to point B in about the same amount of time. Your newer car, being more efficient, will get you from point A to point B, but you'll use less gas. It's more efficient, meaning you have a greater capacity for miles on the same quantity of gasoline.
That's a great way to explain it, because what residents will not realize is that the air is coming out of the supply register, and it's not going to all of a sudden, be blowing your eyebrows back. Just wafting it.
You are more aerodynamic than I am, so I got to show off my drag.
Absolutely. So it's not going to be moving more air in that idea, but you are right, because we all know how long the air conditioner runs. We just have it in there. We know when it comes on, we hear it, and then we realize, did it shut off yet? It's just been running forever. And the R22 systems, the older systems, they're going to run for long periods of time using the same energy, doing less work trying to get there. And then when you get to the 410A, it's going to run for less time, and all of a sudden it cycles off. And the newer systems, they're going to be running for even lesser time, which means the less time it runs, the more money I save on my electric bill. Hallelujah.
Yes. Yes. And for our amenity spaces where the property picks up the utility bills, that has a direct impact on our bottom line.
It sure does. Absolutely. And we only have, for efficiency, we only have so much standard for multifamily because of size restraints and piping layouts and things like that. So we are working right now in the greatest efficiency we've ever seen with the right capacities. And that combination is really, we're in a good place as far as that goes. It's just the biggest thing are your maintenance personnel ready for the change? That's the real question, I think, that's out there. Because if they are used to 410A, which we've had for 20 years, we've had 410A for a long time. If they're used to 410A, but they're not ready for the new gases, then let's make a plan right now and get 410A in there that they're comfortable with. The gas is going to be around, it's going to be available, and it's going to service just like they're used to. It's old hat.
We're going to pause our conversation right here, and we'll pick it up next time on The Maintenance Mindset. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. I'll see you somewhere. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.